Yeah, kid. Welcome everybody back to another episode of the Handsome Homebuyer podcast. My name is Charles, AKA the Handsome Homebuyer, AKA Captain Permit, AKA
El Judío Maravilloso,
AKA the soon-to-be 2020 LLS Man of the Year. Banger of a podcast today. We have, as I put on my IG, the Floyd Mayweather, ding ding, of the Queens fix and flip scene. The only difference, and I mean the only difference, is he hasn't hit 40 yet. Floyd's an old man. This guy's a young buck. A lot of life left in him. Maddie, you know who also is the Floyd Mayweather of the permit world? Damn right, Captain Permit. 516-513-8838. If you need plans, you need permits, if you need anything permit related across Long Island, from Elmont to Montauk, we're talking new construction, legalizations, decks, interior alterations. We are the real estate investor, fix and flippers best friend. Do you know why? Because I flipped over 300 houses in the last 5 years, and I've gotten in trouble everywhere you could possibly get in trouble on Long Island. So if you need us, 516-513-8838. And obviously, I'm the Handsome Homebuyer. If you have a house that smells like cat pee, is dated from the 1960s, has 6 inches of mold on the wall, human waste floating past the basement steps, all true. Our man today can vouch for it because he deals with the same thing, if not worse. We're both quick. We're both easy. We're both a good time. He's a lot more fashionable than I am. We both want to buy it, but in this case, I want to buy it. 516-777 sold. All right. Banger of a podcast today. We have a man I met. Actually, I guess I got to tell the backstory. A buddy of mine, I'm always looking for interesting, cool, intelligent people that are doing their thing on the highest level out there, right? And this is a lesson for everybody. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't reach out to people, people are cool. You can't trust the persona that you see online. You can't be afraid to reach out because you don't think people are going to want to talk to you. So I reached out to this gentleman, very gracious, very generous. He's like, yo, my boy Darren's like, you got to have Henry Ike on the podcast, bro. He's a Queens legend. He's been in the game for 20 plus years. He's seen the highs. He's seen the lows. He's doing it in the boroughs, which is, I would dare to say, the craziest place in the country to do business. So I hit him up on the IG. We met up, and here we are today. So this gentleman, 20 plus years in the business.
That's right.
Self-made.
That's right. Self-taught.
Done it all.
Yep.
Giving back to the community.
Yep.
Young buck.
Yep.
Bringing everybody in the community up, saying, listen, doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what you've been through, anything's possible. Gives back, educational events, the whole nine. And he's just starting out at only 39 years old. Sir Henry Ike.
Thank you. Listen, I appreciate being here. It's truly humbling, especially when I have a platform to reach young folk, inspire, and motivate them, man. It feels good.
Yeah, man. No, I really appreciate you coming out. Again, we had a great conversation. We hooked up. We sat there for an hour and a half talking about everything. But we really didn't get to delve into your story because from what I understand, I mean, you, just the whole self-taught thing, from where you come from. So take us back a little bit, you know, where you were born, how you found real estate. I mean, you've been through the highs of pre-crash real estate.
Correct.
You've been through the absolute lows of, 2009, 2010.
Correct.
And now you're on a rocket ship to the moon again.
For sure.
So let's take it back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you come from? Then how'd you ultimately find real estate?
Born in Nigeria, came straight into Queens, the south side of Queens, in the late 90s, when the city was dealing with some major drug epidemic. So crack was rampant in New York City at the time. So there was gangs and things of that nature. My family came here really impoverished, and I had to figure a way out.
How old were you when you came here?
11. Yes, I was young. I was real young.
Sisters?
Yeah, 5 siblings. Mom, dad. We came here. We were virtually almost homeless. Ultimately found a 1-bedroom apartment where we cramped all in there and vowed to make it work. My mom was a hustler. My dad was hardworking. So. But I had to make do, man.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, but through those, I always say to people, so I grew up in Wantagh, which is, a upper middle class type of area. And I always say to myself, I was very blessed, but I say to my parents, I was like, you gave me too much. I wish you would have made me struggle more because I think for a lot of people, it's a handicap. Yeah. So obviously you kind of harness something coming out of from that experience because you're 24/7 work.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting back then too was it was like a bubble in the hood. You know, the kinds of things that inspired and motivated us as kids were seeing pimps, prostitutes getting money, you know, drug dealers hustling and buying the big Mercedes-Benz with rims on it. We never really saw true things that I see now as truly inspirational, like true wealth accumulation, true sustainable forms of living. We saw things that were like, yo, you either gonna end up getting locked up or dead because you're living on the edge. You're getting this money the fast way and it's not all legal. So, and I knew that wasn't right. So real estate for me actually saved me, because looking back now, if I didn't start doing real estate, the only other things that I saw that I was going to start pursuing was things that was on the street, like hustling, getting money on the side and shit like that. And then music, because kids in my hood were rapping and doing things like that. And I loved music, so I would associate myself with them. And so I always tell people real estate was like my savior, because it gave me a way out.
So that's what I was going to ask you. When my mother is saying you are what you live. You're a product of your environment, right?
For sure.
So you obviously had great parents that kept you on the straight and narrow through everything. But when you're in a world of fast money and poverty and just all those negative forces, it's so easy to go that way. Especially, I mean, you're a very entrepreneurial guy.
For sure.
No matter what you would have gotten into, you would have crushed it.
I would have.
So what kept you on the straight and narrow versus going that way?
You know, all right, so what's the statute of limitation on flipping drugs, by the way? But anyway, but many years ago,
Jay-Z did it and talked about it. I think we're good. In another lifetime.
So there's this dude on the block that would approach kids like myself and say, hey, here's a bag of pot. Go out there, sell it, $5 or whatever, dime, and I'll give you $1. Using numbers, random numbers, right? And I'll make a couple of dollars here and there. And it hit me. And when I went to a real estate office after school, right, I would pass this real estate office, and I went in there and I'm like, yo, I'm poor, we don't have a lot of money, and I'm looking for a job, but I'm not old enough to really start working yet. I think I must have been 16 at the time. And the guy's like, oh, you could hop on the phones and you could try to see if you're good at sales. And each time you connect with a customer, and if you're able to make a deal with them, whether it be convince them to come into the office and give us a list and things of that nature, we'll give you $20 or $30.
Okay.
Again, I'm using random number for argument's sake. And then I got on the phone and I started connecting with these folks on the phone. I truly was enjoying conversing with these people on a different level, right? In juxtaposition with what was going on in the hood, like dangerous. When I go do what I did on the streets, there were guns, there was drugs, there was always a possibility of like something deadly happening. And I knew I had younger siblings and parents that like really were on my neck to see that I did well.
Okay.
So I liked the other life better. So I was on both sides now, leaving the streets and then going into this real estate office where the guys were dressed up in suit. They looked different. They were making money. And I said to myself, this is the path I want to take. And from that time on, things just began to change for me. I had no interest in the street game, and besides the music aspect of it, but my life changed from that point on. So,
but inherently, did you always kind of had like a grit, a hustle, a work ethic? Because just for you, the average 16-year-old is afraid to approach an adult about everything and anything. But here you are walking store to store, business to business, like, yo, listen, this is my truth, and I'm not afraid to share it with you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for a job. I need an opportunity. So, like, where does that come from?
You know what? I think what ignited it was I found my passion and that passion might have been maybe embedded deep down inside of me, or maybe the passion might have been developed as a result of me just lacking housing, right? Living with 5 siblings, mom, dad, 7 of us in a 1-bedroom. Housing and space was prime, right? So when I walked into this real estate office and saw them moving 10, 15 homes a month in Nassau County, Suffolk County, big homes, beautiful homes, I would see pictures. That I don't know. I got drawn to that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and then I found my passion in that, and that passion was looking back, was connected to the fact that I said to myself, if I keep providing housing for all these people, selling houses, doing listings, doing rentals, one day someone would do it for me and my family and get us out of this jam, and I would have my own room. And the goal was,
wow,
get your own bed. I want my own bedroom. I'm tired of sleeping with 3 of my brothers. Yeah.
Wow. Just think about like how raw and how basic that is, but how motivating that is.
Yeah.
So you didn't start out in investment, you started out in sales.
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't even buy a Metro card.
So you started out in sales, and what, you were just hustling, calls, selling rentals, whatever you can make money in.
Correct.
How did you then, and you were 18, 19 years old at that point?
I was 16, 17, pounding the phones, doing sales related business and learning the game from Port Realty, this real estate investment firm / brokerage that I worked at.
So how did you ultimately transition into investing? Because there's a lot of people, I'm sure they hit you up, they hit me up, they're like, yo, Charles, Ike, I love what you guys are doing. I want to do what you're doing. But there's not like a clear path. It's not easy. For me, I was lucky enough to find mentors and have a lot of formal real estate education and then go out there and do it. But you didn't have that at all. You just did it.
Yeah. Yes. So again, finding your passion at a young age is prime. It's key.
You're lucky to do that.
Absolutely. And everybody looks at me and say, hey, yo, you're not even close to 40. And by the time I was 30 years old, first of all, just fast forward in a decade later, I had built a massive real estate empire, 40 employees, exposure with real estate in 30 states.
This is pre-crash?
This is pre-crash, right? Pre-2008. Pre-2008. So point being, I found out that real estate was what I wanted to do when I was 16 years old. And I found out that it was what I wanted to do at a very high level. So I was really determined and I stuck to it. So by the time I was 26, I was already in the game 10 years. Mm-hmm. But how did I transition from picking up phones to being the biggest real estate flipper in Queens? Very simple. I literally grinded my way to the top, right? So we started making phone calls and they found out that I was really good at this. So these sales guys that I worked with, they would be like, yo, get Henry on the phone, let him get this deal done, right? They made, 2-3% commission. They'll throw me $1,000. By the time you knew it, that year I had made 30-40 grand closing a lot of these deals. And I lived with my mom. Very little expectations. I wasn't dating. I didn't live a flashy life at the time. I was saving a lot of my dough, right? So by the time I was 17, I did my first flip, believe it or not, where I purchased the house, put a down payment, and I signed my contract. And on that first flip, I made $100,000.
And this is before the TV shows, the
Correct.
boot camps, the education, YouTube, any of that.
All self-taught. I would come home and figure out how to multiply this knowledge and how to take it to another level. See, a lot of the guys, I worked for a real estate firm that they were investors. And I got really close to the owner, Todd Grossman, that started the firm, right? He was also a broker. And I would look at the numbers. They would buy the property for $150,000. They would sell it for $300,000. And I'm like, wow. And these guys were moving 10, 15 properties. So I also think that part of my success came as a result of being in a place that practiced real estate in a manner that maximized what you can gain from it. You feel me? So if I went to Century 21, where their focus was just making 2-3% commission, right? That would have probably been I would be trained to be looking at deals from that angle. But I was working at a firm where they were looking at distressed properties and trying to make 100, 200, 300, and sky's the limit.
He became your mentor, basically.
Yeah. So I looked at that. I looked at it, things from that perspective, and I said, that's the angle I want to take. There are bigger bucks in this. That's the angle that's going to get me and my family out of this hole the fastest.
So you do the first flip.
I made $100,000.
Proof of concept. I remember my first flip, because when I wanted to get into this, everyone's like, I haven't been in the game that long. I've been doing this for 6 years, or 5 years. So people are like, kid, you can't do it. Like, the market just fell apart. You can never do it. You're gonna lose everything. And then it took me. I studied for 3 years. It took me a year to finally get a house. When I finally got a house, they're like, it's never gonna work. I said, I'm going to buy it for X, I'm going to renovate it for Y, and I'm going to sell it for Z. And they're like, kid, it's never going to work. You're not going to be able to renovate it for that amount. You're never going to get that X amount of dollars when you sell it. And I literally did just that. Bought it at X, renovated it for Y, sold it for Z. And it was proof of concept. And it was like one of the greatest moments of my life. Because at that point, you realize, because people like you and I, like, they don't see what we see. When you were sitting there at 16 years old, you saw the lifestyle that you wanted to live. You saw the 100 flips a year.
Absolutely. And you know what's crazy? I always tell people this. Everything I have today, I envisioned 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even later. The house I live in now, I have a sketch I drew when I was 14 years old. The house I live in today is the house I drew when I was 14 years old. And that's a couple of decades back. Right? And my car I drive today, all the cars in my driveway were cars that I knew I wanted. And everything just manifested itself.
Yeah. It's like you already know. You're just waiting for everybody else to catch up.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about you also is, and you did it at a very young age, and a lot of people have problems with this in business. You get into business, you start making money, great. But scaling a business is very difficult. You need systems, you need the right people, you need to manage properly. Like, I don't know you very well, but every time I see you, talk to you, you're always very calm. You always have good people around you that are taking care of things. What was the process like of scaling the business from then that one flip to 100 flips?
That's a great question. And that's a question I had to sometimes stop and ask myself, how did I do it? Because quite frankly, the kind of infrastructure I built almost 2 decades ago, it's probably going to be almost impossible for me to do it now. But I'll tell you what I did. Back then, I didn't have as much to lose as I do now, so I'm a little more, I guess, timid when it comes to going into a new venture.
Okay.
But for me, trusting the process and creating yourself or multiplying yourself in people that you trust was key for me. I wasn't afraid to teach Eric everything I knew, to build a sample of myself for him to carry out the agenda so that we can have exposure in multiple counties and do the kind of volume we were doing at the height of it.
Yeah. No, that's the hardest part. I know it was the hardest part for me. There are certain days where I'm just like, you just feel like you've been getting the shit beat out of you.
Yeah. You got to be able to, especially if you want to truly scale on a massive level, you got to multiply yourself in other people that you trust.
So what do you say to people that are out there that are saying, Henry, aren't you afraid that if you teach somebody everything you know, that they're just going to leave you, they're going to take people, they're going to take your deals? What do you say to those people?
If you have those kind of worries, then you're not prepared to scale. Number one, I'm so confident in myself that no matter how much I teach them, I'm never afraid that they will ever exceed me.
Okay. No one's ever going to be you.
Exactly. And I said that in my song, Beat Me, Never That. Youngest landlord, they call me that. Real estate, I did that. But man, so I'm never afraid that anybody's gonna come and do it better than me, because there are things that I'm yet to do that I don't even know yet. Like, I'm not even at my peak yet. So whatever I put out, or if I'm gonna instill value in anyone, and if they think they want to be a wise ass to take that knowledge that I put in them and depart from me, I always look at it like it's their loss, because at the end of the day, you haven't even seen the half of the best of me yet.
Talk to me about building an empire at 26 years old, and then the fall of the biggest recession in pretty much any of our lifetimes.
You know, it's funny because a lot of my friends got caught up in the recession of 2008, 2009, and many investors got wiped out that I came in the game with. But to me, that was the height of my career. I think I was so wealthy at that time. I couldn't even count some of my assets. I would have properties in places and not remember that I had them. It was just that crazy. But what destroyed me was when I started losing confidence in the things that got me to the place that I was. When I thought that I had conquered real estate, I had reached the apex that I could ever reach, and I had no more joy and passion for it. And I basically just started laying off my staff. And at the time, I smelled the recession that was coming, a bubble was coming. We had done so many deals, and I started spending time at the big mansions in the Hamptons and like wild parties and indulging in things that I shouldn't be indulging in, and also associating myself with characters that have questionable behavioral patterns. That's what got me screwed. Not really that I made bad real estate choices. I've never lost money in real estate.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because I see people around me, as you become more successful, it's another point. There's a lot of temptation, and it's hard to stay on the straight and narrow.
Absolutely.
So what ultimately, reignited that fire and that passion for real estate?
So in 2000, I forgot what it was, but I forgot when it was exactly, but I had started hanging out with guys that were doing drugs, not selling, but using drugs. And I would basically hang out, party all night, sleep my days away. My weekends would begin from the Hamptons and end up in Florida, and I would just be flying private and just doing a lot of reckless things. And a buddy of mine at the time, this is when the stock market was tanking, right? He's like, listen, you've got all this millions of dollars, you've got all these assets, let's go into the stock market, the stock business, stock trading business. He started showing me past performances and sold me the idea that if we invested money in these companies that he had picked from, I don't know where he picked them from, but
The market had tanked at this point?
the market was going down.
Okay.
But he was predicting that we had hit the bottom. I think the Dow was at 14,000 and it had came down to like 12,000, right?
Ultimately, what did it stop at, like 8?
8, correct.
Okay, got it.
So when this thing was at like, I would say 11, 12,000.
Okay.
Yeah, he came to me, he said, Henry, let's put our chips into the stock market. Things gonna bounce back. You could turn this 10 million into 20 and we could be really, really wealthy and get this 120-foot yacht we were looking at the time. Listen, and you know where this is going, of course. So anyway, it was a couple of pharmaceutical stocks,
Okay.
and another tech company, and BlackBerry, RIM, RIMM. That was the ticker symbol at the time. So I said, cool. I'll put a couple of million into it, no problem. Put the money in. It did well. Overnight, I think there was some news that came out. The stock popped. We were like up maybe 5% overnight. I said, okay, this is kind of cool. He's like, yo, put some more in. Okay. So now we're a couple of millions in. Just fast forward a week into this whole thing, the stock started going down. Things started dropping precipitously. And he's like, Henry, I don't think this thing's ever going to go any lower. Let's triple down.
Wow.
To make a long story short, and I'm very competitive in nature. I've never taken a loss. I don't like to take losses. So for me, this is the first time my true nature came out, like, I'm not going to lose. What is it going to take to come back at this? He's like, let's cost average in, right? Basically, you started buying this thing out, whatever. Now it's down 50%. Throw some big money into it. All right, I'll put $5 million into it. No problem. So it became a cost average game. Like, oh, this thing's cheap now. Let's keep buying. And by the time I knew it, I became a gambler to my own wealth. I became enslaved to my own wealth. I was like stuck on my TV screen. I was just kept putting money into this thing, and it just crushed me. And the sad part about it is, it wasn't that I was like so mad that I was losing money or that I lost a ton of money, because I'm a hustler. I know how to make it. I've come from not having, but it was like it took away my soul. I became enslaved to CNBC, watching the ticker symbol, watching these candlesticks of my money going up. I'm up $1 million, down $1 million, up $2 million, down $10 million. Like, it became like I became an emotional wreck, to the extent where this thing was at like pennies, and I still mortgaged my own personal home and bought some more of it.
Wow. You really went all in.
I went all in, even balls in. At the end, I mortgaged my personal home that I had built, and put that last chip in. I got fucked. And the company announced that BlackBerry went out of business, right? The stock zeroed out. Another company we invested in called PMI also got zeroed out. And yeah, so in all, I lost a large sum of money.
That was that was in the middle of the crash. So could you do real estate deals at that time?
Bro, this was after the crash, when things were selling for cheap.
Yeah.
When you could have bought buildings in Brooklyn for $300,000-$400,000 that are now selling for millions, right? This was the time that, quite frankly, there was opportunity all over the place, because these banks had so much foreclosures on their books. They were just letting these things go.
Yeah.
Short sales were popping at the time. The market was wide open if you had money. Auctions were crazy because the investors lost their shirt, right? So there wasn't that much money out in the game. So if you had money, you were king. And I had bread, but I was fucked.
How do you come back from that? Or do you end up in a real dark place for a while?
Yeah, well, it was so bad. I mean, I could look back and laugh at this now. I ballooned to almost 260 pounds, right? I'm ripped now. I'm 165, I'm 185 pounds right now, but I ballooned to almost 265 when this happened. I stayed home eating chips and drinking soda all day in bed, and drinking, just waiting for the stock to come back, right?
Wow.
But what hit me was, it wasn't that I was losing money. It was that I was losing myself from the depression of just trying to get back at it, trying to like fight back. And I was fighting back, throwing good money into bad. I didn't know when to say enough is enough. I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going to walk away, and hopefully I'll make it back again, right? So I was that like fighter that was at war, getting blazed with machine guns with a knife. And rather than like walking away with my life, I stood there waiting for the guy to run out of bullets to start fighting back with my knife.
So what ultimately ended up being the bottom?
Well, the bottom was when I realized that I was out of money. My house was mortgaged out. My credit was shit, and I couldn't mortgage my office building. And I was at the point where I couldn't even tell my parents I had lost it all, and I contemplated killing myself. That was the bottom. So check this out, though. So I go to my mom, and I wrote a note to her that, listen, thank you so much for everything you've done for me, but I think I've had enough, right? I was going to read the note to her because I just couldn't stomach giving it to her. And she's like, I know there's something wrong with you. Let's go see the pastor. Because we have this pastor that we always go see. And then we walk in there. I didn't even have to say anything. The pastor looked at me and said, son, let's pray. And I'm not a church guy. I'm not a preacher. But the pastor looked at me, and anyone that knows me knows like something was off. I was always in shape. I ballooned. I didn't laugh. I didn't speak much. I just ate like a pig. But we got to the church, and this was like on a Tuesday when nobody was there besides myself, my mom, and the pastor. he's like, we prayed, and he goes, the Lord asked me to tell you to go back to what you used to do. At this time now, I had been out of real estate for like a year and a half, maybe 2. And I was saying to myself, what I used to do was just recklessly throwing money at bad stocks. And this thing just kept going down, and partying and traveling and drinking and going to the Hamptons and doing all this crazy stuff. Is that what the Lord wants me to go back to? And the pastor's like, I don't know what it is, but God is telling me to tell you to go back to this gift that he gave you that you used to do. I couldn't figure it out. So I go home, I'm laying in bed, and I'm like, this was a waste of time. I'm just going to pop this OD on these pills. And because God knows my house was like, at this point, I'm already like 8 months late on my mortgage that I took out to buy stocks, and I didn't have any income coming in. So I was like really screwed. So I said to myself, before I even took these pills, I'm like, what did this pastor really mean? Go back to what you used to do. And then it hit me. I went back a little bit further, and I'm like, real estate was something I was really passionate about. I'm going to go back to it. But of course I didn't have any money. I had already fucked up my credit. I was in debt. So I basically went back to doing what I was doing when I was 16, 17 years old.
Sales.
Yep. Making commissions, $1,500 here, $1,000 there, and just trying to stay afloat, trying to survive.
What about the people that were around you at like kind of the height before it all came crashing down? Were you were alone? That was it?
Oh, when the well dried out, they went with it. And at the time I had closed down my office, laid everybody off, and so I didn't really have, and when I was at that stage where I had lost a lot of money, you have to remember now, I had been making money and seeing millions and living this lifestyle now for like 10 years. So I'm used to like, being in a limo every day and having multiple cars in the driveway and not worrying about having a mortgage on my property, and being able to travel whenever I wanted to. When I couldn't even use my credit card to put gas in my car, I hit home, bro. It was tough, So I basically went back to the basics of real estate 101. Just grinding, looking for listings, saving these commissions up, and hoping that one day you'll catch a break with a homeowner that allow you to take a quick claim deed, and then you satisfy the mortgage when you sell the property. And that was my saving grace that got me from, the little $1,500 broker sales commission here and there. I found a homeowner that was that I did it wasn't really a wholesale deal. It was a situation where she sold me the property, and I took a quick claim deed subject to the existing mortgage on the property.
Yeah.
Right. So fixed up the property myself, helped her relocate. She was older at the time. I didn't give her much money. I think I gave her like $3,000. She moved out. I fixed up the property nicely, created value in the property, and flipped the property, and came out all right. I think that first deal I did $250,000.
So people understand that strategy that you did, because that's very high level. Break it down a little bit so people understand what you mean by quick claim deed and taking it subject to the existing mortgage.
All right. So what do you do when you have no credit or bad credit? You've got no income, and you've got no real assets, right? Because there are 3 elements you need to purchase a property if you're going to go to a bank and seek financing. You need to have credit, you got to have income, right? Or you got to have assets. So I had none of these 3 elements. That's number one. And back then, hard money lenders were not as lenient as they are now, and I think we should go into that. So for me, being able to create my own financing or create a way to acquire this property was paramount, right? If I wanted to buy a property for $300,000 and I didn't have any of these 3 elements, I'm not going anywhere. But being able to connect with the seller, right? And being able to find out exactly what their needs are, right? And for this particular seller, for them, they didn't just want money. they wanted to move. They needed someone to help them relocate. They didn't want to do any repairs to the property. They wanted to sell it as is. So I was able to structure a situation whereby I took on all the responsibilities. She had an open mortgage on the property. Okay. I took an authorization to service that mortgage that she has on the property, took the deed to the property, and a power of attorney to manage and control all of the other things that she had going on, all the other debt on the property, all the other bullshit she's got going on with the property. I took that responsibility, gave her a release, gave her $3,000, helped her move, and basically the property was mine without having to put any real money down, no down payment, just took a deed to the property, and also took all of the open issues as well. And of course, I did my homework. I ran a title search to make sure all the open issues cumulatively still left value and equity in the property.
Wow. So essentially, so people understand, simply, there was a mortgage on the property. He took over the mortgage without paying it off, put money into it to renovate, built value, and then sold it at a massive profit.
And paid the mortgage.
And then paid the mortgage when you sold it.
Correct. With the proceeds from my end buyer.
Exactly. And at that, like, from that point on, what's the rise of?
See, when I did that deal, the profit was crazy because when you take a quick claim deed, you save money on transfer taxes, right? Because you're inheriting all of this. Additionally, because we were able to do all the work ourselves and get the property back in shape, and I think with that particular house, I created a small extension in the back and I added an additional bedroom and bath. I maximized the value. We were able to pull in another $250,000 from what we would have gotten should we have just fixed it up basically and just sold it the way it is.
Talk to me about, I mean, you've been in the game for a long time, bro. As a young guy, you've been in the game for over 20 years. I had a mentor of mine, Carl, on last week. He's been in the game for 40 years. Talk to me about what it was like 20 years ago as opposed to today, what's going on. Because Carl said, this is the toughest market I've ever seen in 40 years. I mean, I haven't been around that long, but it's crazy out there right now, man.
I think I wouldn't say it's the toughest market. I think it's a different market. And for me, what has always been paramount for me is being able to adapt to market conditions, and it becomes very light work.
I love you saying that, dude. I mean, I look around and the amount of people that are in the game, it's crazy, right? There's a ton of cheap money out there, hard money lenders. Like, if you're two guys that sit down like we do on these chairs, watch a fix and flip show and say to themselves, you know what? I can go get 90% of the purchase price, 100% of the rental cost. You go to the auctions, you've told me there's hard money lenders outside the auction literally begging you to take money, right? We can each throw in $10,000, $20,000 that we've saved up, and we're ready to flip a house. We don't know shit, but we're ready to flip a house.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you stay relevant, do volume, and keep it moving through something like that? There are people that are out there that I've spoken to who say, I don't need to make any money. I just want to flip a house. I just want to learn the business.
All right, so check this out, right? Remember I said the market is not harder now than it was 20, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
It's just different.
Okay.
And what makes it very light work is being adaptable to the different market conditions. All right. So back then, money was tight. You couldn't get money as easy as you can get it right now. So that was a different condition. And you and I both know if you're in the real estate flip game, you need cash. You need access to capital. Liquidity is king, right? So now you got a lot of bread, right? The hard money lenders lining up out there giving the money like Christmas cheese, right? But back then, there was no really access to capital was kind of tough. It was all about who you really knew, right? So for me, the situation that we're into now with cheap money, with easy money, is that it's coming at a price, right? So now you're buying these properties with with these easy money, right? And you're paying 8-9% to carry the property. And a lot of these distressed properties, you got to renovate them, right? And if you don't have the right construction team or permit team, you might get a stop work order, or you might get jammed up, and you might end up holding and carrying that property for a year, right? And while you're carrying the property, you're paying astronomical interest and taxes and whatnot to carry the property, right? And in Queens, in the bars where I do a lot of my deals, we have situations where there's a tenant in there. Sometimes I've bought properties that are vacant and people move in, and you got to evict the tenant out of there, and you're in the property for a year trying to get a tenant out of there. So for me, the key, like I said before, that makes it very light work is being adaptable. So what are we doing now? Like when I have a property that I'm taking hard money on, massive shout out to Shaniqua at Bob's. We renovate these properties nicely. If I estimate that it's going to take me 6 months to sell the property after renovation, I go to Bob's Furniture. Shaniqua hooks me up. Full living room set, bedroom set. I'll get a whole house furnished for less than $3,000, right? It does two things for me. I'll stage the property with these furnitures, right? So it'll help me sell it quicker. It looks a lot nicer. And B, we're able to do Airbnb in the meantime to offset our carrying cost, right? So now I'm Airbnb-ing the property for $400 a night. I'm generating $4, $5, $6 a month, eyes closed, and covering all of my costs. And in some cases, we're actually making money, right? It's actually becoming another stream of income for us, and we're moving the properties quicker. So these are all just elements of adaptation that I talk about. We didn't have to do this 10, 20 years ago because, first of all, Airbnb wasn't around back then, right? But there was a different kind of issue back then, right? There was no money. So now you got money, but it's coming at a cost, and guys are losing money. So here's a way where we're minimizing our carrying costs by offsetting it with these short-term rentals.
No, I mean, that's brilliant, man. I would have never thought of something like that. That's brilliant.
It's light work, man.
At the same time, are you seeing a lot more deals that, like, you go to the auctions or whatever, you seeing a lot more deals where you're just like, yo, the numbers just don't make sense?
100%. And quite frankly, can I be frank with you? A lot of the deals out there, the numbers don't make sense. You have to create the value. And that's why the sophisticated investors are the ones that are really coming up on top, because they're able to buy things that may seem ordinary to an average investor that don't make sense. But then you look at like their P&L round trip after they bought and sold the property, and you're like, oh shit, how did he crank out $100,000 on this property?
Yeah.
Well, it's just being able to create value.
Yeah, everyone has this thing. I just did a video today that you guys will see about rentals. I buy a lot of rentals. I basically flip houses to buy rentals. Everybody knows that. That's my shtick. But the price on a lot of these rentals went up to it didn't make sense. So what did I do? I looked at square footage, and now we're turning 3 bedrooms to 4 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms to get the numbers to hit and work. So I guess to your point, the guys that are always going to succeed and come on top are the guys that are going to innovate, get creative, and make it work.
Yeah. Because you can't really make money the conventional way nowadays. You can't just buy a house, throw some paint on it, and make real money. Right? You have to get creative. It's either you're gonna be doing an extension, you're unless you're buying the cash, but if you're gonna be borrowing money at the numbers we're seeing nowadays, it's gonna be tough to turn a profit.
Talk to me about the music thing.
Oh, I love music, man. You know, my eyes when I hear first of all, music is my high. I don't smoke, and very seldom do I drink now, at least. So for me, what gets me, what makes me feel good is music. You know, music for me is that other thing that I would have been had I not been doing real estate. So, you know, and this Young Self-Made song we put out, this is the theme song for real estate investors. You know, when you doing your real estate deals and you having a challenge, just put that Young Self-Made, flipping Chris, never yet. Hold on, wait, I got a check. Just put that on, man, and you'd be surprised how smooth your deal will go. You know, but you gotta love it though. I love music.
So I want to close it out. I got one last question. Again, you've been through the lows, the highs, the lows, the highs. You're a young guy. What's the future of Sir Henry Ike look like? What are the dreams? What are the passions? What does the future look like?
Well, right now, I'm not truly motivated. I mean, I'm a businessman. I love to make money, but my future is not driven and motivated by money. I've been there, done that. I think I've attained almost everything, every number, every goal I set forth for myself. I've shattered it. And I know you compared me to Mayweather, but I think Mayweather and I were not on the same level. Especially at the rate he's spending, he's gonna go out a lot quicker than I am. But I definitely stack up a lot higher than Mayweather. And more importantly, the man has taken a bloodbath over his career. I haven't been touched yet, knock on wood. And I don't think at the rate he's spending money, I don't think he's gonna last as long as we're lasting. But I love Mayweather. He's a great boxer, but a bad businessman. He talks about he owns skyscrapers, but he don't even know where they are. But for me though, my passion now, after the rise, the fall, the comeback, the lows, my passion now is truly trying to inspire young folks coming up, especially the ones that are passionate about music, business, or real estate, trying to inspire, motivate them, coach them, and share as much knowledge as possible so that if I can save one person from doing something terrible like what I was about to do when I lost it all, my goal is achieved. So I spread out this message. I spread out the message of positivity, of wealth creation, and of how if you truly believe and you're passionate about what you do, you can succeed. That's my message. It's all light work. And more importantly, for us is we're going to keep pushing and teaching people how to do this stuff because I felt like someone gave me an opportunity when I was coming up, and I owe that honor to give back to the world.
So I got to ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
May 17th, I'm getting 9 of the top real estate investors from Long Island together on one stage to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
For sure.
We got the best of the best in fix and flip, single-family rentals, multifamily, construction, legal, design, tax liens, tax deeds, and there's one spot left. And it's yours if you want it.
Listen, I'll take the spot if it's going to reach somebody and if it's for a good cause. And it sounds like it's for a good cause. So, yes, so long as I'm open and I'm available, I'll take it.
We got 2,200 seats. We're going to sell 2,000 seats, and we're going to give 200 away to high school kids.
That sounds like fun, man. I love, and I say this a lot because the best thing anyone can, and I'm trying to get this right, but for me, I feel like the best reward anyone can have, any young person can have, is finding out what they're truly passionate about and staying in that lane and perfecting it at a young age, right? If you look at any great musician, any successful businessman, there's one thing in common with all of these people. They started their career path at a very young age and they stuck to it. And by the time they got to their mid-20s, late 20s, they were professionals at it and they had been extremely successful. So when I see these young cats nowadays coming up, I look at them and my heart bleeds when I see that they're not out there pursuing what they're passionate about, what their passion is, and why they're not out there trying to perfect their craft. Because when you get older like I am now, like I was saying to you earlier, I can't build what I built when I was 17, 18 years old. I couldn't do it now. It will be almost, I don't have the time. I don't have the mental capacity to do it. So when you're young, man, for these young cats coming up, don't play with that because it would never come back. You can't turn time back in hand.
Bro, you're a gentleman from what you've done and what you've built and where you've come from and just the mindset. I take my hat off to you. If people are interested in obviously seeing what you do, if obviously they have any deals in the boroughs that they're looking to source to somebody who does the right thing, how do they get a hold of you? What's your IG? How do people reach out and get in touch?
And by the way, we're going to give you a YSM hat. We got one in the car, Eddie. You're going to grab one right? Because you are truly an exemplary figure of what young self-made represents. You're young, you're a hustler, you're self-made, and you're all about positivity and spreading the knowledge of wealth creation and putting people on the right track. So I'm all about that. So we're going to get you that young self-made hat.
I appreciate that, man.
I'm Sir H. Ike, the youngest, most humbled, retired landlord, future ruler. You know what time it is. Everything's light work. If you like what we're doing, you want to be inspired, you want to be motivated, you want to see that lifestyle, entertainment, follow us on the gram, Henry Ike, on Snap at Henry Ike, and we'll show you some crazy stuff you've never seen before, man. Yeah!
And I'm obviously the Handsome Homebuyer. If you got a house that smells like cat pee, is dated from the 1960s, commercial property, gas stations, assisted living facilities, industrial property, I'm quick, I'm easy, I'm a good time, I want to buy it. 516-777 sold. That's a wrap.
Orgulloso estoy de mi herencia judía. Benjamín Lev Ben Shlomo, cuando me llaman a la